I want to ask something really tangible here because this is something I've been experiencing and it seems like you might experience this at scale. So I want to get your opinion. If you're in the middle of a workday and you have a jam-packed day or you're just having a lot of meetings or you have responsibilities or things that you cannot just move or cancel and you have to confront, but you are also having just like a ton of anxiety, like a tightening of the heart or something where you're just not operating at your best, but you
Yeah.
have to. Like that is kind of where I get really tripped up because it's like you can't just go lay down on your bed in your bed and take a nap. Like some people don't have that luxury. So it's like, what do you just accept? Like, hey, I'm not going to be operating from my best right now, but I'm going to continue with these responsibilities and just power through. Because sometimes, Scott and I talk a lot about sitting in the discomfort and like not pushing through and like being sensitive and putting on a different mask, but actually just like acknowledging that this is how you feel and then continuing on with your day. But I struggle with that where it's like if I'm anxious, like there's a shutdown that happens and it's like I cannot even operate sometimes. So what do you do in those moments?
Yeah, honestly, for so many, it can be really debilitating where you actually can't physically or mentally take on a certain, whether it's a call or a meeting or a certain event that you may have had planned. I've come into those situations a lot, and 10 out of 10 of those situations, honestly, I've had to do because I literally had no choice. Like I maybe was halfway across the world and I spent thousands and thousands of dollars to host this event and to be here and to have all of these customers waiting for you. And you literally have to perform and they have no idea. And what I always kind of thought about in my head was nobody knows what you're feeling right now. At the end of the day, like you need to get on that stage or whatever it is. And the stage can be a meeting, it can be an event, it can be anything work related, and you perform. And then after that, you deal with whatever you need to deal with. Unfortunately, like I wish there was another way. I'm sure there are certain cases where you can say, okay, I can't do this right now. I can't perform at my best. We need to reschedule. But in many cases, it's just not realistic. And a lot of the ways that I would manage that would be like calling a friend or calling my mom right beforehand to say, this is how I'm feeling right now. I literally feel like I'm frozen. I can't perform. I can't do this. Maybe I'm crying. Maybe I'm like in my room, like 5 minutes before I have to get ready and I'm still like in a robe, like can't get out of my hotel room. And hopefully that person on the other line would say, listen, like, what is the worst possible thing that can happen right now? And typically it's not that bad. And they'll tell you, okay, you get on there, you perform. After that, go back to your room, go back to your bed, watch Netflix, eat, order whatever you want and call it a day. This moment will pass. And I think that's how I've gotten through it. I've gotten through it by, kind of like calling that friend or that boyfriend or that family member just to help get through that moment of in time.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Like I think sometimes when we express what we're feeling, it doesn't feel as bottled up inside us. And also, obviously, this mostly applies to entrepreneurs and people who run their own businesses. I always, sometimes when I don't feel well, I really assess because I feel as if as just women in business in general and the way our society runs, that we feel as if everything on our calendar is so important to move the needle forward. But I really think there's like, we could cut 40% of the fat and still be as successful and still be as expansive in business. And so sometimes for me, if I'm not feeling well, I think that we put this emergency catastrophe over, well, if I don't show up to this meeting, it's going to mean this about me and my business. And it's going to mean this about how passionate and determined and dedicated I am. And so I think there's sometimes a difference where we can step back and more see the full picture of like, shit happens and people have to reschedule all the time. And so giving yourself a little bit of that grace. And at the same time, I am also a really big proponent of doing it and moving through it, because that's going to rewire your brain and give you the evidence that you can survive those moments. If you do reschedule, and if you do, kind of remove yourself from the position, you're giving your mind and your
Permission.
self-confidence, Rolodex, evidence that you actually are incapable of moving through anxiety. So yes, of course, there are extreme situations, living with bipolar disorder, I get catatonic. And like when I have to cancel a podcast recording because of my mental health, it is because there is no physical way I will be able to speak. Usually, if I'm just anxious or not having a great day, I will push through, because it's when you push through, you usually get to minute 10, 15, 20 of the situation. And all of a sudden it kind of melts away a little bit, because you're no longer in that state of survival, and you've shown yourself that you can do it.
We always talk about that with the podcast. Like there will be days when we're like, oh, I don't want to fucking do this. Like I don't have energy or whatever. And we get out of a podcast and it's like a drug. Something happens where it's just this amazing connection. It's this deep conversation that it just pulls us out of whatever type of anxiety or lull we were having right before. And I really liked what you said about Taylor, about kind of focusing on what you can control. I've started to do that a little bit more, because I am such a control freak. So it's like, okay, I might be spiraling or having a shame spiral, but what is something around me? Like, what can I do? Okay, the structure of my day, my breath, I can work out, what I nourish myself with, what I ingest and put in my body. Those are the things I can control. So why don't I focus all my attention on that? And then any external forces, it's just like, okay, like that's just not within my control. I'm going to try to maneuver it that way. That is a lot of self control and like determination.
Do you say the serenity prayer to yourself?
I do not,
because when
it reminds me of alcohol.
Okay, well, when I started healing with my mental illness and my anxiety was so bad, I would say to myself, I would write down over and over and over again, like I was in trouble on the school board, and I would just write, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah.
And just taking those 3 levels of inventory really helps you assess the situation.
Yeah.
I love
Taylor,
that.
Are there any mantras or things you repeat to yourself, or just simple affirmations? Like for me, I just say, I am successful today. That is something that I came up with Scout, because I just have a really skewed definition of success, and I can never like feel proud of myself for those things. So it's like, I literally write out, I am successful today. So simple.
I love that. I love both of those. I feel like I need both of those written on my wall and to look at every single day. Honestly, it's very cliche, but when I was younger, my mom would say it to my sister and I all the time, and she would always say it's the journey, not the destination. And there are many different phrases and many different ways you can, speak to that phrase, but ultimately it really speaks to being present. And I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs are always focused on the next, always looking to someone else and their success. And that for me causes a ton of anxiety, because I'm like, oh, I'm not doing enough. Like, oh, this person just sold their company for millions of dollars. Like, I'm not doing enough right now. And so I think just understanding, like, being present, first of all, is so important, and really enjoying the process. Like, that's what life is. It's a process of going through those failures and learning from every single aspect and moment in your life, and building relationships and connecting with humans. And I think that's what kind of gets me through each day. It's like, yeah, it could have been a really shitty day, but like, what did we learn from this? And were you present? And, did you, and regardless, like, it could have been a terrible day, but that day there was a purpose to it. And I don't know, I think it also teaches you not to take life for granted. I think during COVID or throughout COVID, there's so many terrible things that had happened that, we need to just focus on being more present.